All right, here we are. Welcome to the Lovecraft Easing podcast. Our guest today is Mary Rickert. Hey, Mary.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me here.
Sure thing. Emma Gibbon is a guest panelist today. Hey, Emma.
Hello.
Emma emailed me when she heard you were going to be on and said that she really wanted to be on the same episode. So I said, fine, but you have to ask all the questions. No, not all the questions, but so let's do introductions. Matt's not here today, but the rest of us are. I'm Mike Davis. John Langan, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm John Langan. I've written a couple of books, and I'm pleased to be here.
Bridget.
Hello, I'm Bridget. I do not write books, but I draw things and I write some music.
Okay. DeBronzo.
Hi, Mike DeBronzo, architect, artist, and now an official panelist.
Yeah,
Been upgraded.
that's right. You leveled up.
Woohoo!
So, Emma, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I also write books, and recently I was in a writing team for a podcast, a fiction podcast.
Oh, which one was that?
It was Undertow Blood Forest, available wherever podcasts are. Yes, so that came out a couple of weeks ago. It's not finished its run yet. So Undertow Blood Forest.
Undertow Blood Forest. What's a quick synopsis?
It's werewolves. There we go.
Okay.
It's to paraphrase another famous horror thing. It turns out Maine is lousy with werewolves.
Oh.
So basically that's what it is. It's a long series, hour episodes every week, and it looks like it's the second season of Undertow, but each season is its own story. So this one follows a guy named Frank who, after a tragic thing happens, moves up to Maine and bites off more than he can chew, literally.
So if we want to listen to this storyline that you helped write, we go to Undertow.
If you look up Undertow Blood Forest on anywhere where you get your podcasts, so whether it's Apple or Spotify or anything like that, you'll find it.
But we go to season 2.
So Blood Forest is season 2. That's like the subtitle.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right, cool. I'll check it out.
Thank you.
Audience, you should check it out. Pete Rollick.
Yeah, Pete Rollick. I pretend to write books, mostly just to, get free books from the publishers to add to my collection. Don't tell them, but I would write for free if they just paid me in books.
We won't tell anyone.
Don't tell.
But your salary is about to go down.
Because you have to pay for DeBronzo, don't you?
I do. No.
Oh.
I don't pay him. Mary, can you, for those out there who don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? This is not your first book, for example.
Right. I've written a couple novels, and this is a separately published novella and short stories. Before this, before I became a writer, I was a kindergarten teacher for about a decade. And after I left that, I did a lot of bohemian jobs. I lived and worked in Sequoia National Park for a couple of years. And now I'm here in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, where I enjoy writing.
Well, then the name of your latest book, it's a novella, is called Lucky Girl, How I Became a Horror Writer, a KRAMPUS story, by M. Rickert. So yeah, this is a really interesting book. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, so Emma,
Yes.
you want to take it away with some questions?
Yeah, I've got questions. I wrote them down and
Oh,
everything.
Good. Oh, I just want to mention real quick, if you're not a Patreon, I'm not trying to be a used car salesman, but the Patreons literally keep the Lovecraft Easing going, you know, not just the podcast, but the micropress and the community, things like that. We do Patreon podcasts, starts at $5 a month. You get every single Patreon podcast. And those are pretty interesting. For example, Ramsey Campbell is going to be on next week on a Patreon podcast. We're going to do a deep background episode on him. And the deep background episodes are those episodes where we, of course, we talk about the writer's work, but we really get into the creator themselves. Doesn't always have to be a writer. The person themselves that we're interviewing, and, you know, how did they start? Why did they want to become a writer? What made them the person that they are today? And with someone like Ramsey Campbell, that should be really interesting. Previous interviewees in this series have been Laird Barron, Livia Llewellyn, Matt Carden, Nadia Bolkin, several others. And we're also doing a deep background on Brian Keene sometime in December. So I'll keep you guys posted. So that's just, you get that stuff just at the bottom level. So just go to patreon.com/Lovecraft Easing, or just Google Lovecraft Easing Patreon. So thank you for those of you who are patrons. So take it away, Emma.
All right. So Mary.
Yes.
As I said earlier, it's really great to meet you after all these years of talking online and things like that.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Mike's right. I totally pulled strings for the first time in my life when I knew that you were going to be on.
You don't have to pull strings. All you have to do is say you want to be here.
Lucky Girl, how I became a horror writer, Krampus story. What is the real story of how you became a horror writer, if that's how you define yourself? And how much is reflected in the book? Is this really your story?
I have not had any of the tragedies that I tend to write about, but I have always, when I was very young, even wrote kind of weird. When I was like in 4th grade or so. No, it's probably 6th grade, but somewhere in there, I wrote a story about a girl who was being picked on, and she didn't know why nobody liked her. And this was very similar to my grade school experience, except at the very end of the story, she turns around wagging her tail behind her or something like that. So I was always writing weird, and I actually then proceeded to read that story to my classmates. And I can still picture them just looking at me with complete bafflement, and the teacher too, when I arrived at that ending. I think I wonder sometimes if, though, no, I didn't have the tragedies, you know, when I was growing up, my father had a lot of illnesses, and there was, you know, just a lot of the ambulance coming to the house, a lot of him being gone for a long time at the hospital. And from a fairly young age, the sense of, you know, impending doom that actually never did arrive, because he lived a very long time. But there was a sense of things not being real secure. And I was raised Catholic, and it was the sort of thing I remember being in church and then having a prayer, you know, that my family would be okay. And they were naming all the 7 children and just this a very young and early awareness of that things can be shattered fairly easily. And so I sometimes wonder if it came from there. And I did develop an appreciation for, I want to say that there is some solace in the reflection of horror, that is the experience of a lot of people, and it is the experience of basically the world. So I don't turn to horror as well, but I do think there is solace there in a way. And as to Lucky Girl, I did put probably a little bit more. I've started now. I'm 62. I'm turning 63 soon. And for the first time, I really am starting to say, okay, I've got some stuff I can start using. So I did put Wisconsin in there. And for years, all my fantasy has been, in some sort of unnamed place and location. But I used Wisconsin, which is where I live now and also where I grew up. And I did use some of my experience as a young writer. And then there's a little bit in there about the experience of being critiqued and trying not to notice that, but but noticing it and responding to it.
Excuse me real quick. I just want to comment that what you said about horror reminds me of something that author Catriona Ward said to me when I interviewed her, that I'm going to paraphrase this, but and I hope well, but she said, horror is me saying that I'm afraid of this thing. You may be afraid of this thing too, and let's hold hands and walk through it and get through it together.
That's a beautiful way of saying it. That's beautiful.
She said it slightly better than that, but that's the idea.
I think it's a real experience for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you talk a bit about how your process and what it was like writing Lucky Girl? I'm especially interested because I've got props. Hang on. Did you write it after Shipbuilder of Belfairy? And what was the difference between them? Because they have similar themes in them, but they're very different books. And I was wondering if you could tell us about your writing process, and is it different for each book, and how was it for Lucky Girl compared to others?
I did write it after the Shipbuilder, and the Shipbuilder of Belfairy, it probably took me 3 or 4 years. And Lucky Girl was a much faster process than that. I would say that my writing process is very similar, no matter the length of the work I do, although, of course, it takes longer for the longer works. I'm not somebody who generally gets an idea. I am somebody who gets a feeling and often a sense of a character. So for Shipbuilder, the first feeling I got was a little boy coloring at a table and a rather threatening older man in the room with him at the time. And a Lucky Girl, I wrote during the pandemic lockdown. And, I know how it started, is I sometimes write a Christmas story for my family as a Christmas present. So I started it with that in mind, but it got too long. So I didn't finish it in time. And I very much enjoyed I write longhand, and I would come upstairs here, actually into this room, and just sitting down and using some of the fear and sense of isolation that was going on with the lockdown, though for me and my experience was not difficult as it was for so many people. But I liked using some of those emotions and finding them sort of arise in writing Lucky Girl. So when I do for almost everything it's just kind of a mess. It's like, I think there's that, who said that quote of, the ability to hold up, various stories at the same time. So at first I don't really know, what it is. It's kind of a sense that there'll be a character and I'll be writing about the character. And so for Lucky Girl, the character became apparent fairly quickly, the role. But then when the other people start talking, for instance, they tell stories. And I knew that the stories I wanted them to tell, I didn't want them to hold up the whole book. I wanted them to be a little bit incomplete so that they don't become the completion. The story, hopefully the book will become the completion. And so as I was working on it, I had one fellow tell quite the longest story, and I knew it wasn't right. I was like, oh, this isn't quite right, but it has a vague feeling. And in that first draft, at least, I just want to get the structure and people in their places generally. I'm not thinking this really consciously, but I will know sometimes like, okay, this isn't quite right, but it's a placeholder and I'll come back to it. And I think I did that for Shipbuilder too, quite a bit. It's at some point I'll have the shape of the story, I have the characters of the story. I do write longhand. So then I'll take actually a literal yellow magic marker and I'll start going through. There's different categories. Like one category will be like, okay, now I need to go through and yellow highlight. Well, the sections that I say, this isn't quite right, you know, or I might go through and highlight. This could be the theme. This could be what that story has come to say, or this could be what this story has come to say. But I have to figure out which one it is. Once I figure out what it is, then I can take that as sort of a headline in my mind and start crossing out or altering the things to support one story or one theme. And this process for me goes on quite a while. I enjoy it very much. Once I have the story structure and the sense of the feeling of it, it's this sort of, am I going to get it? You know, is it going to come together? And, you know, picking and picking and picking at it. So then my pages will be so messy, I'll go type them in, print it out again. Now I might look and say, okay, I'm going to highlight, you know, phrases I'm using more than one place, you know, which place is a potent, which place is it unnecessary. I might even decide that this sentence said what the story came and what it's all about. I don't want that in here. That was for me to help me realize what I'm doing. Lucky Girl. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say Lucky Girl, it was actually really fun to write. I had a lot of fun writing it. And even though I do all those steps, it felt, I quite enjoyed it. And like the Shipbuilder, which took years for me, I did love it, but there was a lot of pain involved in that process.
Yeah, I think you can tell. So like, I mean, if you haven't read The Shipbuilder, it's a fantastic book. It really is, but it's painful. It is painful to read. And with Lucky Girl, I think that was the first thing I said, because my husband read it first because he got the mail first, which I feel is unfair, but whatever. And then I read it, and the first thing I said, I was like, it was really fun. It was fun. And he's not mostly a horror reader. So he's like, okay. And I'm like, no, I could feel it was fun. And I feel like, how are we for spoilers, Mike? Can I give spoilers?
We try not to, because
I try not to.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
I don't think this is a spoiler.
We have done it, but usually it's after the book's been out for a while and we warn people. So
okay, so I'm going to try and not give a spoiler,
because I'm assuming most of the people who are listening, the idea is, hey, if you've never heard of this writer or you have, but you haven't heard of this book, you need to pick it up and read it. You know.
Yeah, so we have to keep it under wraps.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So let me see how I can word this. One of the things I love about Lucky Girl, and you've done it in other things like your short story True Crime, is that not only is there like a sense of a meta sense of you talking about a person becoming a horror writer, but also you like take us through, and this was part of the fun for me, you take us through a trip of different horror tropes, and so seamlessly, and so like it's like you're sweeping us along. We don't even know that you're doing this until later, and you think, wait a minute, she's just told, and so there's all these things that happen in horror stories, and there's a sense of playfulness about it. And this is not really a question, but it's just like, I want you to know that I really appreciated that, and that it was really fun. I could feel the fun from you writing it, you know, like, and Shipbuilder of Belfary was a different experience. I could feel that.
Yeah,
that took some writing. Yeah.
Thank you, and I appreciate the feedback, and I appreciate hearing that worked for you. That was at one point I thought, I wondered, I considered, you know, really leaning in on that a lot more, and leaning in on you know, things about writing and you know, in a more specific way, but I was really worried that I would lose the story in the process. So I wanted to keep it in there, and maybe a little bit of a wink, but I didn't want to lose, you know, the story has to be primary no matter what ideas I eventually come up with. So I actually really appreciate that you enjoyed that and saw that.
When Emma asked about your process and you were answering about the editing and the re-editing and so forth, I think that's a lesson that a lot of beginning writers, it takes them a while to learn, or beginning anything creative. It could be music composition, it could be paint, it could be a lot of things, that the first draft does not have to be perfect. And if you think it does, it's only going to slow you down and discourage you, you know, no matter what creative thing that you're doing.
I think so too. Even when I taught little kids, I was like, you know, sometimes you just have to make a mess before you can clean things up. And sometimes in order to organize, you have to disorganize. And as well as I know that, you know, after I wrote Lucky Girl, I wrote another novella. I had so much fun writing it. It was really fun. I was enjoying myself. You know, I got the whole thing together, and I sent it out, and it came back. And one of the clues was it didn't bother me that much that it was rejected, which is not my usual response. So I put it in my drawer, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then about 9 months later or so, I pulled it out, and I'm like, what was I thinking? I don't feel like I've made a mistake like that in a long time. I have had things rejected, but I read it and I was like, this was just not done. It was not finished. I was in love with you know, how can I say this? It had characters, and it actually had a plot, and it had an atmosphere. But when I looked at it 9 months later, I was like, this is like a novella that's actually a template for a novel. And the editor was astute enough to realize that. And I'm glad, you know, as they often are, you know, saved me from myself. But it was just a big lesson to remember not to send things out too fast, and to keep that rewriting, and even things that look, because this particular one I think looked neat, but in hindsight and much later, just so much of it was unresolved, and it was in its own way kind of a mess. So it's important to remember, let it be messy, now clean it up. And for me, I often have to take time to put it away for, you know, at least a week when I think it's finished, and then look at it again. But there is a point, because I also, years ago, I started out in poetry, and I always remember working on a poem where I rewrote it. And at a certain point, I was like, well, this is kind of madness, because now it's become a completely other poem. And this other poem is a mess too. So there's a point where I feel like I have to accept the work that is never going to be perfect. And to say there's a certain point, usually for me, it's right around when I think, now I know exactly what I'm doing, and I should start all over right now. Well, I never do. Because at that point, I feel like it's finished, and there's a certain vibrancy to it, and there's something that I'll never be able to find again. That's, you know, that'll be lost in seeking perfection. So usually at that point, I'll say to myself, okay, now, you just have to take the lesson you learned here and apply it to the next work. So I do think rework, but don't kill it.
Isn't that like the theme of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
I adore Zen and the Art of Motorcycle
Right,
Maintenance.
but there is no perfection.
Yeah.
You get
Yeah.
something so that it works and does the job, and then you
Yeah.
move on to the next project.
That's always been my philosophy, is just dive in, which accounts for, Brian Keene told me, we're going to be on the road, so we're going to listen to a lot of like years older episodes of Lovecraft Easing. And I'm thinking, oh God, the sound was not as good as it is now. But you just don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, as they say.
Yeah.
So
I don't remember who said it, but it was something about you don't so much, and this is how I feel about my own writing, you don't so much finish something as you abandon it.
Yeah.
I can't do it anymore. This is it. This is good enough. It's going in.
Well,
And
they're in some ways they're like children, right? You
Yeah.
do what you can, and eventually they say they've had enough and they leave.
Mhm.
You can't, at some point, you
Yeah.
just can't work with them anymore because they don't want to be worked over.
Mhm.
Anyway,
So yeah.
So I've got, this is like, you're touching upon all the stuff that I was going to ask. I have to try and remember which questions I've got. Oh, I know. So I'm a bit of a Grinch. I'm not a big Christmas fan. I like Krampus. Maybe that big Yule cat. Is it Iceland who has the Yule cat that eats the kids? I like that. I like some 70s glam rock UK Christmas music. That really is about it. Are you a Christmas person, Mary? And you mentioned writing stories for your family, and I know that it's like a Christmas tradition to do like spooky stories, and you mention it in the book. Do you do that? Do you tell each other ghostly stories at Christmas? Is that part of your celebrations?
I love Christmas, and I'm actually really surprised that I've suddenly just fallen in love with, the Krampus idea and, writing sort of wintry Christmassy horror. I'm just having the best time over here, which surprises me because I've always been a fairly sentimental Christmas person. I like I like pretty much everything about it. Well, not everything. Oh, go ahead.
The telling horror stories part is more of a English thing, I think. Not that some people don't do it over here in the States, but
Yeah.
yeah. And one of my favorite books, The Woman in Black, starts out like that, by Susan Hill. So
yeah, my family does not have that as a tradition, and I don't really come from a family of storytellers, though everybody's always really supportive of what I do, and they seem to enjoy it. But my Christmas stories that I've written in the past have often been quite sweet and quite, very sweet.
Hallmark Channel.
Yeah, the Hallmark Channel. I mean, I for years watched that as partly, a horror movie. I enjoy it, but there's always that understory, and there's always like the same. They use the same actresses and actors often. So to me, there's just this whole other story going on in my head because, this woman was married to or falling in love with somebody in the last movie, and now she's here and she doesn't mention that person. So what is she doing with these other people that she's going from town to town, so I enjoy them, but there's like a whole other narration going on for me too.
she's in witness protection.
Yeah.
John watches a lot of those every Christmas, so I'm sure he'd be able to comment on that, wouldn't you?
Well, I'm just thinking, man, there's a story, right? There's, it's like a sort of like that would have been one of those weird X-Files episodes, where it seems, or Supernatural, where it seems like it starts off as almost like a parody of those kinds of Hallmark movies, and then it goes on for about 20 minutes or something like that, and then that's when Scully and Mulder show up, and they're like, listen, this has happened before, and then it turns out that she's some kind of shape-changing creature or something like that who just loves Christmas, and like hibernates and then wakes up in a new town or something. But there's a lot of blood. I feel there's a lot of blood and the desiccated husks of people.
She's cursed to relive that Christmas story over and over, Mary.
Yeah.
She's okay with it. She's okay. She's like, this is awesome for me, not so awesome for the people whose brains I eat or insides I suck out, with a straw. But
in season, you mentioned Supernatural. In season 3, there's actually a Krampus story or evil Santa story.
I sort of remember that. Yeah.
And he's he's kind of brutal. So
I feel like in Supernatural, though, the one of the two of them, and probably Dean, would have fallen in love with her, and he would have been like, this is great, and he's wearing Christmas sweaters, and Sam is like, what is happening to you? And I'm spending much too much time thinking about this already. We're writing Supernatural, Hallmark, weird fan fiction on air.
Honestly, it would be much easier just to do the Buffy Christmas special with Xander falling in love with Demon and just call it a day.
Oh yeah, demons were always attracted to Xander.
Yeah, and he was. Why can't I just wear a nice sweater? Yeah.
See, I in my brain, I had the woman as a serial killer. So that guy who showed her the real meaning of Christmas, he's gone.
Yeah.
She's moving to the next town.
She's like, now let me show you the real meaning of Christmas.
Harry,
so
do you
it's like
realize
the
what you've
tall
started
man.
here?
It's like the tall man going from little town to little town, just sucking them dry.
Right.
But one year at a time.
What is
Merry
it? In
Christmas.
the Needful Things, Leland Gaunt just showing up,
Merry Christmas, bitches, you're going down.
Max von Sydow and Hallmark movies, two great tastes that go great together.
I think we should pitch all of these. I'm just saying, we all should pitch them.
It does seem, like, well, that was the Christmas ghost story. I mean, Dickens obviously did one of those every year, but I feel like that's where a lot of M.R. James, even most of his stories came from, was just that I'm going to tell you guys a story for
didn't
Christmas.
he do that every Christmas Eve at his house and invited people to listen? Was that James?
I'm pretty sure, wasn't it?
Was.
And only, not all of them made it out of the house, but that was okay because we got a story. We got a good story out of that.
Have you seen the adaptions that BBC did? I think they're on BritBox, and there's some really good adaptions. Really just terrifying of M.R. James ghost stories.
Yeah.
Well, the book I mentioned, The Woman in Black, of course, everyone's probably seen both movies, but what they leave out of the movies is the framing at the beginning. Everybody in his family it's on Christmas Eve, it's dark out, and they're telling all these ghost stories, and he's the husband, the father and grandfather is getting more and more kind of inwardly agitated because they're telling all these ghosts in chains and fun ghost stories and everything, and he keeps thinking this is not the way that it really is. It's far more horrifying than this. And that's the setup for, he's like, okay, when Christmas is over, I need to write down everything that happened to me years and years ago, and maybe purge it that way. But that,
and also the movies leave out the big kung fu fight. I do. I mean, I understand it.
And everybody was.
They were indeed kung fu fighting. Who knew ghosts?
They also leave out Godzilla, but
then Kung Fu Hustle, just cribs that entire scene. So
that's true.
It's like, oh my God, why am I here?
That's right. I'm bringing it back. Okay, Mary.
Almost like, Jesus, guys, behave.
So I think on this one, on Lucky Girl, your editor, I think your editor was Ellen Datlow, right?
Yeah.
And I know that You have worked with Ellen before because you did, was it The Little Witch, the Halloween novella that you did? Yeah. So I just want to, what was it like? I mean, obviously Ellen Dattel's a massive name in horror. Everybody knows who she is. What was it like working with Ellen? Can you take us through some of the process?
Yeah, you know, Ellen does an amazing job of being incredibly enthusiastic and supportive of the work. And then when it comes time to say, but there's, you know, this is a problem or this needs work, it's very clear. She's spot on. She catches the things. I'm trying to think, you know, I think in Lucky Girl, you know, everything she spotted, I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I did feel like the work was improved. And so she's obviously really smart. And also just, you know, as she should be, very confident in her execution of those remarks, which I really appreciate because that's what I want. You know, I felt, it sounds kind of weird, but I almost felt like I was working with my best self. You know, that is, I don't want to hear like, oh, this works when it doesn't work. And I don't want to do that to myself either. And I don't want it. So it's like she really would find the little areas, find things, say, this isn't clear, or this detail needs expansion. I don't generally, maybe ever, show my work to anyone before I send it out. So the first feedback I get is from whatever editor I send it to. And I do that because when I was younger, especially, and I still have this quality, is I really just wanted people to like me. So I was very susceptible to just trying to please everybody, and it got things really muddled. So I just developed over time an understanding that my best way of working is working by myself, taking it as far as I can and sending it out. But then, you know, things are definitely caught.
Yeah.
and in her hands, I just felt so supported and so comfortable, but not, you know, patronized in any way, though I don't know of any editor who I ever have felt that way with. But it's different maybe from a workshop experience when I did do those, you know. This person really knows what they're talking about. She's really crawled into my story. It's not becoming her story. And just being very clear about what needs to be addressed. So it was a pleasure.
So
she'll be here in 3 weeks, by the way, for those.
Okay.
December 18th.
So this really, you couldn't, it's like we planned it. This really segues into, like, I've got kind of two Mary anecdotes, and I'm sorry, Mary, this is more for the benefit. I want you to know this, but I want the bit for everybody else, really. So what people might not know is that Mary went to grad school with my husband, and so for it, well, I'll tell both of the anecdotes quickly. So I was reading Rickert for years, was a big fan, and then my husband went to grad school to do an MFA, and he didn't really fit in, and he had a rough time. He's not a very social person. He's very quiet. He didn't really fit in, and it was low residency, so you go for 2 weeks. And he's like, there's this lady here called Mary, and she's lovely, and she always checks in on me. Like, whenever we see each other, she always asks me how I am. She checks in with me, and I really appreciate it, because I don't. Who are these people at this MFA program? I don't know, you know. And he was like, she's a great writer. And I'm like, oh, I'm really glad. I'm glad that he's like, yeah, she's a great writer. And then years later, he passes me a book. It's a short story collection called, and I tried to find it yesterday, and I've given it to someone and they've stolen it. So I have to buy it again. Is it we have never been, I was getting it wrong, Mary.
You have never been here. No.
Thank you. And it's fantastic. And he said, oh, this is Mary, who I went to grad school with. And I was like, what? Mary is Rickert? Like, years later, like years and years. And so it turned out Mary, the woman who checked in on him, that I was really appreciative for kind of looking after him a little bit. And Rickert are the same person. And the other thing that leads into what Mary was just talking about, my husband remembers clearly that you were both in a workshop and you were having a story workshopped. And I won't mention who it is, who was talking, but I know it is. and he was telling you that you had to change something on your story, and he was wrong. And my husband clearly remembers writing on your manuscript, do not listen to him, do not change this. Because he didn't want to contradict the guy when he was talking, do not change this. And he said that later you came up to him and you were like, I'm not going to change it. so I kind of know that, you know, as far as workshop goes and editing. But yeah, he remembered very clearly the one thing that he wrote was, do not listen to this man.
Well, workshops are, thank you for telling me that. Of course, I remember Steve very well, and I quite enjoyed his company. And yeah, for me, for workshops, they've just never really been a big match. I know that everybody has to figure out their own learning style and what works for them as writers. And fairly early, I realized that just was not a match for me. And I try to be respectful and painful as it is, listen to what people have to say. But for me, it's usually not tremendously helpful. The one thing would be if there's something where, you know, like a point of confusion, you know, where if all of a sudden there's, you know, 6 people in a group and they're like, well, no, I thought it was, you know, something like that, where I'm like, okay, that I thought that was really clear. And I want it to be clear, you know. So yeah.
Yeah,
So.
I had a similar situation. It doesn't do me any good, to be honest. So yeah, I understand completely. This is a question that Mike gave me the guidance to ask. Who do you consider your influencers, and are there any authors that you reread because of that?
Well, I mean, okay. Whenever I get asked questions like these, my head goes names.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, of course, Stephen King, and I often pick up. Now I'm not sure if I'm going to say this word right. The dance macabre, or dance macabre. Yeah. And I, you know, that's just one of my all-time favorite books, and I will pick that up and just randomly read sections from it. I often find it really helpful. When at first, when Lucky Girl came out, I was reading some of the Goodreads comments, but I'm not doing that anymore. And I was kind of upset at some of the feedback about, well, this isn't really a horror story. And I thought, I mean, I don't know what I'm doing, I guess, you know. And then just randomly had picked up Dance Macabre at the time and was reading some of Stephen King's book recommendations from way back when he wrote that. And I was like, well, these books kind of have a similar sense of horror. So I found reassurance in that. And let's see, I'm trying to, you know, because we're talking about Christmas, I'm thinking of Dickens, you know, and of course I read that every year. I read A Christmas Carol, and I love Alice Hoffman, and read. I think I've read everything she's ever written. I think she's a gorgeous writer. I know I'm going to think of other people. Oh, Edna St. Vincent Millay, and Sylvia Townsend Warner, which I love her. But you know, these are some people I've started reading later, so I'm trying to remember who I read when I was younger. So the one I remember the most as being a really deep influence when I was younger was Stephen King. And then, you know, when I was younger, I read a lot of poetry too, because I started out as a poet.
You know, to your point about Goodreads and comments online and so forth, you know, on the cover of your book, you have a really great blurb from Laird Barron. You know, I'd say he knows what he's talking about probably more than most Goodreads folks online. But you know, the other thing I tell people is look at the best book you can think of. You know, look at one of Laird's books, or look at a classic, or, you know, I bet one of the best cosmic horror books I've ever read is The Fisherman by
That guy.
It'll come to me. It'll come to me.
He owes me money.
The Fisherman by John Langan. It's just brilliant. But I'll bet you there's a 1 or 2 star review if you look on Amazon. Those,
what?
you know, there's idiots. There's so, you know, it doesn't matter how good the book is. There's always, my point is, there's always going to be somebody out there. I just ruined your day, didn't I?
Well,
there's always going to be someone out there who doesn't agree.
Yeah.
There's that classic experiment somebody did in Orlando. They took the manuscript for The Yearling and sent it to an editor at Random House, and the editor at Random House sent it back and said, we not only won't we publish this should never be published at all. And of course, Random House is the publishing house that published The Yearling. And you know,
ouch.
Yeah.
Well, I know I started telling myself, because, you know, I just got so curious, and because I don't show anyone my work, then when it comes out, I'm really curious. But I just started telling myself, I know John just had mentioned Mr. Gaunt, and that's what I started using in my head. I'd say it's a Mr. Gaunt store. You know, you're gonna get some things you really like, but you're gonna have to pay for it, because eventually you're gonna read one of these comments and it's gonna be kind of devastating.
And it's
So
also
now
got that Chowder Society aspect that I really, really love.
I did read Ghost Story a few times. I love Ghost Story. That's a beautiful book.
I also think that not all reviews are created equal, and not all commentary is created equal. You know, I have some writer friends who will say, if you take the good reviews, you have to take the bad reviews. I don't think that's true at all. I mean, if the bad reviews are insightful and well written, I mean, there are sometimes somebody, you know, they kind of get you. You think, oh yeah, but you know, so often they miss what you're. You know, you'll get a bad Amazon review and it will be because the packaging, the book showed up and was ripped or something, you know, so I do think it's okay. I see nothing wrong and no failure in integrity to say, I'm going to take the good, insightful reviews and ditch the other ones, because you know, they're doing someone who feels compelled to write that is doing that for their own reasons. But okay, that's fine. It doesn't give them any more. Doesn't give them any special validity. I think I think artists in general, not just writers, I think there's a kind of fear that you're not going to be like that somehow bad criticism is better. You know, that like we don't trust it when people say nice things about us. Because we're secretly insecure, maybe not so secretly insecure. And so when somebody says, you know, this book was terrible, the packaging was awful, you're like, I knew it. They're telling me what I was secretly afraid of all along. And which is completely understandable. But I just think, you know, I don't exactly want to say fuck those guys, but I kind of do, you know, just they're not. That they certainly have the right to go onto Goodreads and express their opinions and whatever, but whether those opinions have any validity or not, that's a whole other story.
And it's very subjective. There's a reason why I talk about books that I love and invite authors on who have written things that I love, like Mary with Lucky Girl. But if I don't like a book, I don't say bad things about it. I just ignore it, because you know what? It is subjective. I could be wrong. You know, everybody else might love it and I might not get it, you know,
So when I started out writing, I did a lot of reviews for New York Review of Science Fiction and under Dave Hartwell. And Dave was notorious for sending reviews back and saying, you've got to do a balanced review. there's good things about this book and there's bad things about this book, and you can't just glow about it and you can't just tear it apart. You've got to find a balanced way of presenting the issues and go through it and be fair about it. It's very Fox News to be fair and balanced in your review, but you know, his argument was that some editor somewhere liked this book and published it.
Right.
There had to be a reason. Now, as self-publishing became more frequent, some of that criticism went away.
Well, look, if you have a book that someone like Ellen Datlow loves and wanted to see published, and if you have a book that Laird Barron read and loved, and you know, Christopher Golden, Sarah Langan, Alma Katsu, I mean, these are people who know what a great horror story is. So yeah.
I feel really grateful to all the people, you know, who did take the time to read it and to blurb it, because I know that it does take time, and I'm not been a good networker, and you know, most of these people I don't know, and but I know their work, and it means a lot to me. I thought it was extraordinarily generous of the people to do that.
Any more questions from you, Emma?
I have one more.
Sure.
Well, I have a bunch, but you know,
As
I
many as Mary has time for, I suppose.
What have you got on the pipeline now? What are you working on? Is there anything coming out? Are you taking a break for Christmas? What's on the radar for you?
I'm actually working on sort of a wintry horror story that I have been working on. It's just a short story, and I've been working on it for quite a while. I'm hoping to, I'm getting closer. It's that point where it starts to feel like, okay, there's a little bit of buzzing feeling, and it's like, it's coming together. It's coming together. I'm having a lot of, again, fun with it, because I'm at the point where it's getting closer. I don't know though, that ending still isn't quite having the resonance I want it to have. And then actually right after, when I finish that, I plan on writing another sort of wintry horror ghosty story. And that's it.
So that's 3 wintry horror stories in a row.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
we're not gonna, so no more, we're not gonna let you write any more summer or fall or spring stories.
I don't know. I really like this as a right now. I'm really enjoying this as a place to be working in.
Well, I don't know what those 2 stories are about, obviously, but I'll tell you one thing I've said many times on this show is that I love it when weather is a huge part of the story, almost one of the characters.
Yeah,
You
I do
know,
too.
So first thing that comes to mind is Hulu just put up a Storm of the Century a few weeks ago. Stephen King's Storm of the Century. You know, where would that story be without that winter storm?
Yeah.
You know, so.
I'm reading a book right now. I mean, it came out, I think, in 2015 called Mind of Winter. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. And it's set a Christmas morning, and there's a big snowstorm, and mom is home alone with her teenage daughter that she adopted from Russia as an infant or baby, but now is beginning to feel like something's not right there. And there's this, but it's very slow build. I'm probably 150 pages in, and there's just the sense of foreboding and the storm, and I just love that stuff.
I'll have to check that out. What's that title again?
It's called Mind of Winter. And
Mind of Winter. Okay.
yeah, the author's name is something like Linda Kachiak.
Yeah, excuse me, Kaschke, Laura.
Laura, excuse me, Laura.
Yeah, so.
You know, when I lived in Sequoia National Park for those 2 years, we would get 20 feet of snow. we would get so much snow that there was a path, and the path had, not as tall as street lights, but poles with lights on the top along the pathway, taller than people, obviously. And, it would get to a point where you'd be walking on the snow and you could see the glow at your feet from the light post that was buried under the snow. And the employee housing, people would have to put boards on their windows because otherwise the snow could break through into the housing. I have a lot of great snow memories from living there.
So I was born in Minot, North Dakota.
Oh my gosh.
And we had a 2-story house, and the second story of the house is a door. This opens up to air.
Okay.
Because in the winter, that's how you get out of the house.
Wow. Wow.
It seems dangerous, but that's the only way you get out, because the snow drifts and the piled up snow, meaning that your garage and your normal entrances are all covered.
Wow. Do they still get that much snow now?
I don't know. I don't keep track. The whole idea just terrifies me.
Did anybody accidentally ever walk through that door when it didn't snow?
Probably not.
Okay, I just had to ask that.
Because you keep it locked, right? It doesn't go anywhere. I do know, I can remember that we used to take the dog and throw him out the door into the snow, and he would tunnel around back to the front door, and we'd let him in.
My God, Pete. Yeah, Mind of Winter, a novel. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna have to check that out. So yeah, thank you. So I know that you have to go, but one of the things that we're going to talk about today after you leave is favorite horror movies. Now, you mentioned 2 to me before everyone else got here. You want to tell us what you like about those 2?
Sure. I mentioned The Eclipse, which is set in an Irish book festival. And it's a story about grief and loss. And then there's a bit of a ghost story that comes in. It's very subtle, slow building. And then it had like a jump scare where I literally screamed and jumped. My husband beside me did the same thing, and then laughed and laughed and laughed. Because as I was telling Mike, I get nauseous fairly easily if I watch anything that's too slashery. And so I really loved The Eclipse. And then was the other, well, I like Saint Maud. We had talked about
Yeah,
that.
you mentioned that. I'm sorry. And
I
you
really
mentioned
like
Trick or
Saint
Treat.
Maud.
That's a really brutal film.
Trick or Treat.
No, Saint Maud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. And I like Trick or Treat, but I did cover my eyes through it. And then I like the Krampus one that came out a few years ago. It's got that combination of horror and humor. I really love
Pete's
that
favorite movie. What is that?
Was it? What?
Dark Exports.
Rare Exports.
Rare Exports, right.
I love that one too. And then there was a movie that came out, I think it came out last year, called Silent Night. Am I getting the title right? And I was saying it's everybody's getting together for Christmas Eve, and there's this cloud coming towards them of some toxic thing. So it's last Christmas Eve. I thought it was really excellent.
Well, I think you got to 5 after all.
Yeah.
Well, folks, the name of the book is Lucky Girl by M. Rickert. Lucky Girl, How I Became a Horror Writer, a Krampus story. And it's a novella. It's a quick read, but it is a really good and fun read. Really great horror story. So I believe it's available in Kindle too. So
yeah.
Pick it up in Kindle or print. So,
Yeah.
so thanks for being with us
Thank you
Mary.
so much.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah,
It was-
thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank-
you, Emma, for the questions. Thank you for
Yes, thank you, Emma.
inviting me. It was so nice to meet everybody, and I will definitely listen into this conversation, you know, off with my face not here.
No problem. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
very
Take it easy.
much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
What about you, Emma? Are you sticking around or do you need to?
No, I can stick around.
All right, so
Cool.
a listener asked us to come up with our 5 favorite horror movies. It's a good thing Matt's not here because he was shaking old. It was a example of old man shakes his fists at clouds last week. She's like, how do you come up with your favorites? I mean, one year is like, geez, don't take it so seriously. So anyway, I came up with Lake Mungo, The Fog, What Lies Beneath,
Mm.
It Follows, and The New Daughter. So they're all sort of I don't know. The Fog is mostly atmosphere, but there's a lot of atmosphere in all of them, and I think all of them sort of sneak up on you, except for perhaps It Follows, which right away somebody gets killed, and it's so horrifying the way that she gets killed. You don't see
Yeah.
it, but you see the results.
See the aftermath.
Yeah. I think that It Follows is just such a brilliant movie, and I've read an article or two about it that ask yourself, when is It Follows set in, because it's hard to come up with an answer.
There's
The-
only I'm
Uh,
sorry.
well, the
There's
girl.
only one,
Go ahead.
the phone. That's the only thing that would possibly put it today. Otherwise, you could place it. Could be the 70s, could be the 80s.
Well, her sister has a Kindle, but it's this of sorts, but it's this round pink thing, if I remember, that looks nothing like any Kindle I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I remember, I don't remember the specifics, but I remember in one scene, I had the subtitles on, and on the radio, there's a fight playing or something, and it's a fight that happened decades ago. In
Well,
real
even-
life, but
even
it's
when they're at-
obviously not that long ago.
Yeah, but even with the pool, I don't want to give anything away in case anybody hasn't seen it. But when they're at the pool and they're throwing the TVs,
Mhm.
aren't a lot of those TVs like the old-fashioned CRTs? I mean, you wouldn't throw a flat screen TV because it just wouldn't look good and doesn't make sense. But there's a lot of them. So we're
Yeah.
going to get all those unless you go to like a junkyard, and who even knows if they're going to be there. So
Right. And that implies that it has a built-in power cord, because on most modern electronics, the power cord detaches.
Well, and I think this, the director is doing this on purpose, of course, for whatever reason, but I think it's to create an even more unsettling feeling, which it does very well.
yeah,
So all of those, as usual, I would not recommend watching the trailers, but especially What Lies Beneath. One of the trailers, it gives the whole plot away. So
I remember in the 80s when Aliens was coming out, and the trailer, the TV spots were just the logo. So
Yeah.
they're coming out, didn't give anything away. And even when they did, like Snorri Weaver would be on like Tonight Show or something like that. Nothing was really given away. Like anything that was a clip was something benign. They're talking, and there's no monsters and no xenomorphs. And that generally built suspense, like you wanted to go see that movie.
right.
It just sucks now because they're throwing everything at the screen to get you in there. Because I don't know, maybe because it's more competition, maybe because a lot of people are programmed for sound bites. You need to see that.
I just
sizzle
tend
reel.
not to watch horror movie trailers anymore. And like I said last week, I understand, like an action movie trailer,
Yeah.
or a comedy.
You know what you're signing
trailer.
up for.
Yeah, but I don't want to no plot twists on a horror trailer, or
No.
perhaps even a mystery if they're going to give stuff away.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, that totally defeats the point.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to give away those things. That's what makes the experience that much more special.
yeah. I was talking about Smile last week. Kelly said he hated it. I said, well, did you watch the trailer first? And he's like, yeah. I was like, well, then you knew the whole story before you went into it. And same thing with, remember the movie we talked about last year or the year before, What Keeps You Alive, Canadian movie.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Didn't see it, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, if you watch the trailer, Pete, you said this, you might as well not watch the first 40 minutes
Right.
of the movie. So
I remember the trailer. It does give away what happens.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
And I watched it, of course, without watching the trailer, and I was shocked. It took me by surprise, and it was great. I love that feeling.
yeah.
So
It's,
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
purposely not watched any of the trailers or read any reviews for Barbarian.
yeah,
'Cause
don't.
I want to see this film and I don't want to be influenced by
Yeah.
any of them.
I didn't watch
Yes.
them. I didn't watch them either, and I watched the movie the other night. That is a disturbing, good horror movie.
yeah, it doesn't go like it just, you don't know where you're going next.
Mm-mm.
Because I did the same thing. I avoided everything because that was everybody's advice. Don't see the trailer. And then you're like, you go from, it's like peeling an onion away, like first layer and like, wait, what? It just keeps going.
But you
That's it.
know, I'm gonna if you watch, there's a movie that you can watch the trailers
Uh,
and they talk about a whole bunch of stuff in the movie and it still does. It's Barbarian Sound Studio.
that's a
Also,
good
the one, yeah, that and the one horror movie trailer that I could recommend everybody watch because the trailer is so hilarious is The Wolf of Snow Hollow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great flick.
He's like,
But
it's a wolf. I mean, it's a werewolf. There's no such thing as werewolves. It's a man, and I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find him, and I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna bring him to justice. And his dad, the sheriff, going, we have every reason to expect this monster to strike again tonight. I won't ask you to pray with me because of the goddamn lawyers.
yeah,
So yeah, you can watch that trailer. It's hilarious. Now, who wants to go next? We're
Sure.
satisfying the listeners here.
all right. Go for
Sure.
it, Bridget.
So I also I will be a little bit of Matt since he's not here. I hate making these lists, but my criteria for this list, they're not necessarily the best horror movies I think I've ever made or the scariest, but my
Oh,
criteria
they're supposed
was,
to be favorites.
yeah, these are the ones that if it's on TV, I will watch it. I will watch it over and over and over again.
Maximum Overdrive.
Yes, no, that's for you. But so my list is Ninth Gate,
Oh yeah.
Bram Stoker's Dracula, The Bride, because I love Stephen King as Victor Frankenstein and Jessica Biel as the Bride of Frankenstein. It's just amazing. Event Horizon and the original Halloween.
Nice.
Yeah. Especially your first two.
Yeah, I mean the composer is a huge reason why those two made the
Yeah.
list because
Yeah.
he's amazing. But I had to put The Bride in there because it's just kind of a guilty watch and well, guilty pleasure, I guess I should say. But I just, yeah, it's so cheesy, but I
don't think
love
I've
it
ever
so
seen
much.
it.
Oh my gosh, you need to
It's
watch
the one
it.
with Sting, right?
Yeah,
Sting's-
Sting is Victor Frankenstein
And Clancy Brown is the
Clancy
creature.
Brown. Yep, he's the creature, and he goes and joins the circus at one point to get away. And he's Clancy Brown's just so sweet as the monster.
Lex
This
Luthor is the
creature.
monster, huh?
Yeah, he did the voice for Lex, didn't he?
That's true.
Oh yeah, in many
Yeah.
movies and
Yep.
TV shows.
Yeah, and then is it? I think it's Billy Barty that's in it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or-
Is it? But anyways,
I need to know.
It's just an awesome movie. If you haven't seen it, it's a good feel good movie. There's this point, my favorite part, where Jessica Biel, Victor Frankenstein thinks he can train Jessica Biel to be the ideal woman. And that's what the irony about this movie is about, that I think none of the other Frankenstein movies have really gotten into. But he's just like, no, I'm going to create the ideal woman. She's going to have her own mind, and she's going to have all the freedoms that a man would have, and all this stuff. And it's just so interesting, like his thought process. And then it gets to the point where she's like, but you didn't make me. You can't make me. You did not make me. And then Sting, as Victor Frankenstein's like, well, as a matter of fact, I did. And he shows her his journals and how he created her and stuff. And yeah, it's just, and then he thinks, oh, maybe I own her because I created her. There's just so many little nuances in there that it's amazing.
There's a life lesson somewhere if we can dig deep enough. Yeah.
No, but there's a story in there, isn't there? Like it's like the ultimate sort of gaslighting.
Yes.
Like where he's constructed this whole situation in which I created you, but he really didn't. That there's something there.
Yeah.
After the supernatural episode, people, this is our next one.
So you could
right.
do something like a Henry Higgins thing where you're teaching her to do all the refineries.
Yes.
But then it's not working out, and she's like, well, I'm just gonna leave. And it's like, you can't.
It absolutely has that in there. And I don't want to spoiler it, but it's been out since like 82. But
I believe it passes Rolex rule.
Or
Okay,
all the
all
nice cities, aren't taking. So he's like, fuck it, she'd make a good assassin.
yes.
I find it amusing that you mentioned Jessica Biel, because briefly on CNN yesterday, when they were announcing Irene Cara was dead, they put up Jessica Biel's picture.
Oh no.
Because
she was in man.
Yes.
No, Flashdance and Fame are not the same. Oh dear.
No, but Irene Cara sang the song for
She
Flash.
did the song.
Yes.
But she's not Jessica Biel.
No, she was just dancing in the yes.
Yeah. Speaking of Lex Luthor, by the way, Kevin Conroy passed away. The voice of Batman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nobody hates this guy as Batman. I mean, Affleck, the rest of those guys, they've got a bunch of supporters, but they've always got somebody who hates them. Nobody hated Kevin Conroy, So
he set the bar, because I mean, when you hear that voice, it's just it's Batman.
It's going to be everybody's going to try. They're going to for the near future, expect everybody to try to impersonate Conroy until finally somebody steps up and does comes up with a version that's theirs.
I'm not so sure that's true, because there's been other animated Batman while Conroy was alive.
Yeah.
But
for example,
I fully expect that
the New 52 and the Justice League one,
Mara or something like that. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
But
I read this really interesting thing about the reason why Conroy was such a good voice is that he did the Batman voice as if that was the true him, and the Bruce Wayne was more of an act, whereas everybody else seems to do Bruce Wayne is the real him, but the Batman's an act. And that's why everybody responded to it more, because the Batman was the true him.
I love that, because that's
Mhm.
exactly the way it is in most versions of the Batman. Batman is the one that's real. Bruce Wayne is the mask.
Yeah.
Batman is the real person. So yeah. Anyway, 5 favorite movies. John, you have any?
Yeah. No, I mean, what I found myself thinking about was like 5 movies that I'm like, because the favorite list just goes on and on and on. But like
Sure.
Barbarian, for example, that would, without wanting to give anything away, I got to the end of that and I was like, wow, that was a movie. Like that was, I don't know if it was a good movie or a bad movie. I think it was mostly good, but the kind of impact on me was just like, I felt the same way about Malignant, which is just, insane and kind of like incredibly silly, but also like it just goes 180 miles an hour. It's just like it just doesn't stop. It's just like, oh, you thought that was crazy? We're going to turn this way now. Oh, you thought that was insane? Yes, there's a parasitic twin, and I'm not even going to, things that like you kind of knew, you sort of guessed some of it, and then it goes, And I felt the same way about The Dark and the Wicked, which is a much more subdued movie.
Yeah.
But I got to the end of it, and I was like, huh. So underlying this movie is this actually very, very conservative message that the movie basically endorses the form of like, very, I don't know, fundamentalist Christianity that the children have moved away from. The movie is basically like, you fools. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that, but it's a really effective, it is an effective film. And Texas Chainsaw I love, so I can't really say, but it reminds me though that sort of crazy energy that you have in Texas Chainsaw. I feel some version of it in these other films where I'm just like, okay, you have a vision and you were pursuing this vision, so I'm just I don't really have my seatbelt on. I've got like my shoulder harness on, and I'm just like, let's go.
Also, in The Dark and the Wicked, they're brave enough to have a couple of things happen that I don't want to spoil, but they never explain them, John. You know what I'm talking about? The phone call.
Yeah. There were just these nutty kinds of things, and then one really good film that I feel is just nobody, I should say nobody watches, but Larry Fessenden's Habit, which is like my favorite, one of my favorite vampire movies. I have like a whole subcategory of favorite vampire movies, and I just love I love what Fessenden does in Habit, because it's so low key, and it's about this guy who's just destroying himself, and the vampire is probably real, but maybe not, or maybe not entirely real. Yeah, there's just Fessenden's a great sort of underground filmmaker, and every now and again he just makes a movie. He's just like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to do this, and so that one for sure. The others, your mileage may vary, but
Yeah. Was that
Fessenden,
5?
that was 5.
Okay.
Fessenden did The Last Winter, right?
Yeah,
Was he the
Fessenden
director?
Last Winter, and he did Wendigo.
Yep.
He did more recently. He did this like this kind of cheesy monster fish in a lake eating sexy teenagers movie, I think called Beneath. And then more recently he did a Frankenstein movie, which is all tangled up in the Iraq War, called, is it Depraved or something like that? But
it's on Hulu, I think. At least it was.
Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah, he's just, I met the guy once, like the only Comic-Con I ever went to. I met him and I just like babbled at him, and he was just like, who is this lunatic, So
he shows up in a lot of cameos too.
Yeah, he's quite often ready to be like dispatced.
Yeah, he's in Session 9 like at the end for like 2 seconds. He's the replacer.
Another great movie.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like good movies, you can just, there's no end to them, but sort of weird, or I don't know what I thought of this, that's a lot easier to put to sort of nail down for me.
Yeah,
that's true. Who wants to go next? Pete, do you have yours together yet, or
yeah, so I came at this from a little different angle. I thought, what's my favorite this kind of film? What's my favorite that kind of film? And then, as I came up with my top 5 categories, I realized that there's only one answer, and it's the same answer to all 5. The best creature feature film ever made that I would, live with a desert on is The Thing by John Carpenter.
Mm.
I really thought you were going to say Chud.
No. The best ghost story that I've really enjoyed is The Fog by John Carpenter.
Thank you.
The best slasher film ever made that I'm going to enjoy till the end of my life is Halloween by John Carpenter. The best zombie film is Assault on Precinct 13 by John Carpenter. And the best cosmic horror film is Prince of Darkness by John Carpenter. I didn't think of, I didn't set out to do all John Carpenter films, but those are some really good films.
Yeah, they are.
If I would, but John's right. If you go on, it's like the best werewolf movie ever made is Ginger Snaps. It's just.
That's what Steven says.
Ginger Snaps is really good.
He loves Steven.
I know a
He
lot of
loves
people are
it.
going to go with American Werewolf in London, but Ginger Snaps is a little bit more subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely subtle.
But we could go on and on. But if you come up with if you try to do it by category, there's a good argument that John Carpenter wins in every single one.
I don't know. I don't think John Carpenter's Vampires is the best vampire
No,
movie
I'd
ever
never
made.
say-
That's the exception
Yeah.
that proves the rule.
Only Lovers Left Alive is right up there when it comes to vampire movies.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Or a
Near
couple
Dark.
of Neil Jordan
I was gonna
ones
say
too.
Near Dark.
Oh yeah, the
Byzantium is, and his adaptation of what do you call it, of Interview with the Vampire is good, but I
Right.
think Byzantium that's another undersung classic.
I saw the first 3 episodes of Interview with the Vampire, and I was watching them, and it just made me miss the movie. I'm like, I gotta stop watching this and watch the movie.
So not impressed with Interview with the Vampire, the series.
No, I'm not impressed with it.
I have not started it yet, so maybe I will.
You've saved yourself some time.
Okay.
am
Shave the word
super-
"yet" off that sentence, and you'll be okay.
I'm really enjoying Wednesday.
Really?
Yes.
Speaking of old men waving, shaking their fists at clouds, Matt doesn't like it.
Well, Matt's wrong.
Okay, I didn't accept that.
Only because he's not here.
Yeah, he's not here to comment.
I'm pretty sure we'd say that anyway.
He's outside of your window right now.
Shaking his fist at the clouds.
Yeah.
Third floor. He's at the 3rd floor window. What?
Yeah, he's in that door. Yeah.
What about you, Emma?
All right. So, I mean, again, like I wrote this list, I could have written
Right.
20 more. I keep thinking of ones. Now I'm sat here looking at it, but I'm going to go with what I wrote down. And it's not even the greatest or what I think is the best movie. I think I more went for, there was this thing going around on social media, something like 5 horror movies to get to know me.
Right.
So I went that way.
Mm.
It's also very clear that the VHS era was very formative for me based on this list. So I just wrote down the first 5 I thought of. May, I think is my favorite one of all time.
Okay.
Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, Lost Boys, Nightbreed, and Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yes.
Yeah, because just even, I mean, I love Bram Stoker's Dracula, but the costuming alone is just insane. So yeah, those are my 5. I feel like everybody's going for the classics, and I'm like, yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
The only
Love it.
thing with
So-
Bram Stoker's Dracula that drives me nuts is Keanu.
Yeah, I know. Bless
And
him.
Winona. I just- With the technology, we could dub their
Don't
voice.
you diss the Keanu.
I
He's
know
like
where
the
the
nicest guy
bastard
on earth.
lives. Yes.
I'm fine because the rest of the performances and Gary Oldman,
Mm.
like he
Oh,
took
he's
the
great.
role just for that one line, and he was right to do so.
He's
I just
about to
feel
retire,
like
too.
Keanu's performance in that movie, well, and Winona Ryder a lot too. Like I feel like I'm watching a stage production with their accents, but I still love it.
But the thing is now, Keanu as Jonathan Harker has transformed my idea of who Jonathan Harker is. So it makes complete sense that he would go to some strange castle and try to sell real estate and be a bit freaked out, and wondering, that he's a bit clueless. Like it completely fits. So now if
Yes.
you reread Dracula, Keanu is Jonathan Harker.
Dear
Bill and Ted's
Dracula,
excellent.
love it.
what can I say to get you into this house today?
Yeah, and it's like, wait, he licked a razor. He was, he hasn't got a reflection. Oh, weird. Do you still want this real estate? Like, it completely fits. It's weirdly a great performance. He is Jonathan Harker.
Actually, since we're talking about this, it really goes the other way. Dracula reaches out to Keanu's firm,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
then they
that's what
send Keanu. So it's
Yeah.
like the firm is pretty much sending, okay, so this weird nobleman from Eastern Europe wants to move to Britain. Who do we want to send who we won't miss?
Right. Who's the low man on the
Yes.
totem pole, right?
See, it fits totally. Who's messing up stuff at
They
the
got
office?
some rich guy that wants to buy all kinds of property in London, and they send the guy who's been on the job for 6 months.
They're just like, he can't screw this up. They're just like, look, just get him to sign here, and
Right.
here.
And
Everything's
if he
fine.
doesn't come
Don't-
back,
you
it's
know?
okay.
Mhm.
Right.
Well, and it's notable that wasn't it Renfield that went before him and he disappeared. They're like, so yeah, we're even gonna send someone lower to go find this guy because we already know that one guy disappeared or came back mad already. So we're gonna
Yeah.
send-
Yeah, let's see. One guy came back mad. You know what? We cannot let this deal go. We got to
a
send
lot
another
of
guy.
money. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot
Who
of
do
money.
we send?
We
Hey,
have to help-
Jonathan.
we have to help people move to England.
Yeah.
Jonathan's walking past his boss's door right at that moment. He goes, "Hey, Harker, get in here."
Right. Wow.
Yes.
Like, oh, I messed up the copy, sir. I'm sorry. Don't worry about it.
No. Sorry, I messed up the coffee, sir.
And the best part is like he's willing to buy all these broken down properties that they haven't been able to shift for decades.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Carfax Abbey. No, it's beautiful. Trust me. And yet it's weird, right? Because there were so many, like there's so many things about the movie that you can sort of laugh at. Gary Oldman's armor, the Dracula armor.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and the bun head.
the
love
corduroy
the
bun
armor,
heads.
and yet it's true that it does, like with Timer or Anthony Hopkins is, she was dead, now we cut off her head, I mean,
She's
But,
the devil's
like-
concubine.
yeah. But like it does work. It like as
It
a whole,
does.
it really is a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts,
Concubine.
All right.
Yeah.
Or they're hammering the stake and the blood
Yeah.
blood getting vomited, and it's
And
like,
this is Francis Ford Coppola's.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They basically can defeat Dracula because Mina knows the train schedules. That's a key thing.
yeah.
That's never
Well,
mind
and then-
that she's
but then
got a
in the-
psychic link with Dracula.
Yes.
But then you've what you've got at the end is, I think you've got every like fanboy's fantasy of sexy Winona Ryder at the end, where she lets her hair down and she's like, "Don't mess with Dracula," and then she cuts off his head.
Yeah.
No one's
Yeah.
gonna kill him but me. Thank you very much.
Right. And who knows if she even really does, right? I mean, there's that whole other thing. But,
Get out of my brain.
And somehow he gets redemption at the end after all the shit he's done just because he gets his head cut off. Doesn't
because
it, like,
it was all for love.
Yeah.
all for
You
love.
know, it
that's
was all
like-
for love, and
It's
you
the
know,
Oh, I
Oceans
didn't
of
know you
Time
got a
thing.
pass for that.
yeah.
Screw
Shit,
that
there's so
baby
much I
you
could
fed
be
to your
doing.
wives 2 hours ago.
Oh yeah, you get love.
Yeah, we
love
just gloss
does it.
over that part.
Yeah.
It wasn't an English baby. That's what.
Oh
matters.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
One of the extra scenes that got cut out of the movie, and very few people know this, is Dracula singing to Winona Ryder's character. Why do birds suddenly appear?
They actually hated each other on that set too.
Did they?
Gary Oldman,
No.
Winona Ryder. It's like
Well,
they
Gary
despise each
Oldman's
other.
an ass, is what I heard. He hates everybody.
He's retiring.
He just retired. Yeah.
Oh, he
Oh.
did just retire. Yeah.
Mm.
He'll be
Wow.
back.
Yeah.
Is he really dead? No.
He's not really retired.
Comes back.
Did they
Cut off
cut
his
head off
head.
yet? Nah.
It's not a great movie, especially compared to Young Frankenstein, but Mel Brooks,
Oh my
the
gosh.
Dracula Dead and Loving It. There were a few minutes where they skewer the Coppola version, where he's like hitting the hammer and the blood just keeps fountaining up over.
Oh,
Somewhere-
Young Frankenstein. I love that movie. Oh, sweet mystery of life. Thus I found you.
That would mean he has an immense Schwanstucker. That goes without saying. I love
You
that.
men
movie.
are all the same, 7 or 8 quick ones, and then you're off to the bar.
Werewolf. Werewolf.
There was
What?
Mary Castle.
Werewolf. Werewolf.
So
Ah.
it's funny that Emma brought up Nightbreed, because as my daughter, I'd mentioned earlier before the show that my daughter is cataloging my book collection. she came across Cabal and the Nightbreed Chronicles and said, Dad, when are you going to let me watch the Nightbreed? And I was like, oh yeah, we can just put that on the list for this week. So, I have a soft spot in my heart for Nightbreed.
Yeah, I
It's
really
not
do.
a great film. It's a really good film.
Yeah.
What about the director's cut? I mean, I've not
I
I've not
picked that up,
watched
but I
that.
watched it. I mean, I can't remember what the differences are though. It's been so
I
long
watched
since
it
I've seen the
recently.
theatrical.
Probably an extra like 20 seconds, and they want. No, let's see how many people buy this.
I
think it's a little
can't
more
remember
substantial.
properly. I think it's like a happier ending for the monsters. Like I think that's the difference.
Is it?
But I can't. You can watch the ending on. I watched it recently on YouTube, but it's been so long I can't compare it.
I bought it, watched it like when the director's cut came out, but it had been years since I saw the original.
Yeah,
and I couldn't put what's new or changed. So
because we were as kids, we watched that. We got it from the. I mean, we were too young to watch it, as is the theme for most of my stories. But we used to watch it like over and over and over. Me and my brother were like, loved that because we were totally. I mean, we were always Team Monster, so
yeah,
I would have liked the director's cut. I think that was what I wanted to happen. So like, they made
there's something kind of fascinatingly meta, especially about the movie. With the slasher versus the monsters. The newer school horror versus older school horror, and the monsters win at the end, or do they? Because David Cronenberg is coming back. I would actually really love to see David Cronenberg.
I was going to say he's completely deranged in that. It's great. Like,
but I would love to see like a sequel to that where he's running around killing people.
Dr. Deckard, I think it was, or Dr. Decker or something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great mask, though.
Yeah, he's like, here, let me put this mask on. It's Cronenberg, so it's like no irony, no nothing. He's just like, well, yeah, time to get to killing.
Just chilling, killing, killing.
Like a villain. Yeah.
So speaking of which, Cronenberg, I watched Crimes of the Future.
How was it?
Yeah. It's a Cronenberg film.
Okay.
It seems to be a natural outgrowth of Dead Ringers. It's got it's some high, not only is it a Cronenberg film, it's got some high level SF in there. I'm not sure I liked it. I'm not sure I hated it, but like John said earlier, it's a movie.
Do not watch Crimes of the
Future. That's what I've heard, though. I've heard a lot of people saying, well, it's nice to see Cronenberg, like any film by Cronenberg is worth watching, but people aren't like, oh my God, it's a late career masterpiece. It's more like, oh, okay, that was nice.
Some things develop over time too.
Yeah.
Sometimes people pan shit and you watch it like 10 years later. You're like, oh, well, I wasn't, your opinion changes, but
like
who knows?
Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
Or like 20 or 30 years later. I mean, sometimes it just takes a long time.
Sometimes 1,000 years later.
Well, look at this. Look at the thing. If you were a horror fan, you loved the movie when it came out. But look how long it's taken for it not to be pissed on because it wasn't ET.
Yeah.
So
it was a box office disaster.
I do take Pete's point though. I feel with sort of whatever you want to call it, mainstream cinema or tour cinema, we talk much more about directors. We're much like, oh, Scorsese or Coppola or whoever, but with horror film, I'm not sure we always do that as much. We talk about like, okay, yeah, Carpenter, Cronenberg, Romero, and there were others as well, but that's another way to like an interesting way to frame this question too would be, who are your top 5 horror directors? And that might,
that's a great idea.
And one of them can't be Carpenter.
Yeah, no, and Carpenter would have to be, right? I mean,
everybody.
one of them can't be Carpenter. Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me too, and tell me if you guys think I'm wrong about this, but it seems like okay, great. And moving on.
Let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah. And with movies, it seems like directors are viewed as on a more escalated level than writers of the movie. And it seems like in TV, it's the exact opposite. It's the writers that are viewed higher than the directors. You know, and I'm not sure why that is.
Well, it's like
Strange.
I had this like Carpenter. Like this is a conversation I had with Kelly Young because Neil Young, not Neil Young. Yeah, Neil Young just came out with a horror movie.
That would be
Neil
fantastic.
Mar-
Neil Young's horror movie. There's a guy in a hat.
Bloody
with
Heart of
hair.
Gold.
Isn't that Dark Knight of the Scarecrow?
No, that was Ingmar Bergman.
Please
okay.
tell us
Shit,
the
yeah.
words of wisdom that Kelly Young had to say.
Well, it's like we were talking about Neil Marshall. Love Dog Soldiers, love The Descent. Then as you go along, it's diminishing returns. And then he just came out with one called The Lair, which it's like I always give him a chance because of those two movies. And Kelly's like, I can't do it. We got two great movies. I'm happy with it. And I go, it's kind of like the Carpenter effect. If you're a fan from John Carpenter, you like Assault on Precinct 13, like those first 5 or 6 movies are gold, and then you get Invisible Man, Ghost of Mars, but you still keep tuning in because you're waiting for John Carpenter to get that. He's got one more in him. So I don't know. I forgot why I started this conversation.
You were gonna.
I just lost my
something
train.
that Kelly Young said.
Well, maybe it has to do with like, and this
But,
probably
yeah.
happens a lot with directors, like all over
That's
the
why.
place. That just every director maybe has a couple of good films in them, and I like more of Carpenter's films, than
Yeah.
like 5 or 6, right? But nonetheless, like for any director, that's a lot,
Oh yeah.
to say.
Thanks for. I
Mhm.
totally lost my train of thought, but bringing me back. It's like, but there's like the high standard, I would say, like for The Thing. Like I love Prince of Darkness, but if I compare the two, it's not. It's like a step below a little bit. But that's my personal opinion. But I'm always
They
looking.
Live.
They Live's great.
I love They Live.
I mean,
It's got a
so
very, very, very subtle message.
yes, absolutely.
It's absolutely subtle. Obey.
Yeah, I kind of feel like with just with off the top of my head with Carpenter, it's Ghosts of Mars. That's where things really, I want to like it. I wish I did. I wish I liked it more than I do. But the whole kind of weird Native American thing that's going on in it, it's just like, oh, John, was this okay in the 90s? Because it's not okay now.
Yeah. Well, Sucker Punch comes out, and he decides to come back and do The Ward, and the plot points are like very similar. So
Yeah.
it's like, and then what was it? Memoirs of an Invisible Man was the only movie I think he didn't attach his name to. And he was like, no, I don't.
Carpenter
this.
directed that.
Yeah, with Chevy Chase and Sam Neill.
Now that is a really dumb movie that I really like.
Chevy Chase is involved, so I'm sure that had something to do with it in the long
Yeah.
run. Apparently, he's not the easiest person to work with. But I
But
don't know.
remember,
Well,
Carpenter
yeah.
also did Starman, which not a horror movie
Oh,
exactly,
great movie.
but an alien,
love Starman.
another alien movie that sort of looks at the alienness of the alien, and this really. I mean, Jeff, what's his name? Jeff Bridges. I don't know if he get an Oscar nomination for that performance, because he certainly
I
should have.
don't
It's a
know.
great
But he
performance.
should have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Carpenter had said that was like because The Thing changed everything, because it got, everybody's comparing it to like pornography when it came out. It's like, it's all blood and guts, but there's not really a lot of blood, a lot of guts,
Yeah.
or alien guts. And he's like, that was my apology movie or whatever. I don't know how exactly he phrased it, but I mean, it's a great movie. So
Yeah.
A lot of people getting knifed in The Fog with no blood too.
yeah, that stuff got added later.
I know.
It's like they looked at it and they're like, no, or he did. It's like, I need to punch it up. It's not.
No, we
working.
don't just need ghosts. We need ghosts
That
who
impale.
slash people. Yeah.
Meat
Right.
hooks and sabers and the whole nine.
Yeah.
And there might be 5 minutes of vampires that I like. I don't know.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, it's again, it's the thing, it's the thing. But I mean, it's Ghosts of Mars vampires. There's like, it's
Yeah,
John Carpenter,
that's-
right? So you want them to be better than they are, and you try to every now and again. You're like, oh look, Ice Cube, whatever.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. When you go from The Heights, then you're getting those movies. So
yeah.
Someday, somewhere along the line, there's gonna be a tell-all, and it's gonna be a whole Krusty the Clown moment. It's like they drove a dump truck of money up to my house.
he loves when his movies get remade because his name's attached, so he has to get a check.
Right, right.
And he
right.
said that, like, I love, smoking pot and playing video games with my kids. And then I get a check. Yeah, go make your movie. Make that remake to the
that's
slog.
like
I'm sure it'll work out great.
That's like Superman the movie, Pete. In the commentary, he's talking to Superman. He's talking about, I forget the names of the producers, but he gets this phone call and he's like, my name is blah, blah, blah. And to Richard Donner, and he goes, and I'm going to give you, I want to give you $1 million to make Superman. And Donner's like, where do I sign?
Yeah.
So,
Looks like what Michael Caine in Jaws 3D, right?
No, the revenge.
The Jaws
the revenge.
Give it the
The
proper
shark
respect.
follows you. He follows you like hundreds of thousands of miles.
Yeah.
Hides in the bushes, watching you through binoculars.
That's
But
Ellen.
you know what? I just can't
Sorry,
stand stalker sharks. It's just wrong.
Well, the best
Phil,
part
this is
was
the third thing.
You're
I'm gonna
not
be
the
working
Avon
on.
lady. You're the
Land shark.
Brody's
Except
wife.
when you have to do Michael Caine's accent saying that,
when that
Oh,
movie
yeah.
got made, the reason she kept Brody's wife keeps showing up is because she was like the wife of, I think, one of the producers. So that's why she kept getting, not to take anything away from her, that's why she kept getting the job. And Michael Caine said, I need to eat. In like an interview, he's like, I did a movie for money.
Yeah,
wasn't
was
for
it
the
Michael
artistic
Caine?
license."
I think it was actually Michael Caine that says first take the roles that are great, and then you take the roles that will help you pay the rent.
Yeah.
So
Didn't
Well,
he
yeah,
just
he and Gene Hackman used to be the same. You just would see them in everything. And sometimes the movie was good, sometimes not so much. But their performance is always interesting.
the modern day Nick Cages.
Yeah.
I mean, I swear, if a month goes by and there's not a new Nick Cage movie, I still wonder if he's dead.
He owed all that tax money, man. Now he's catching up. I don't know. It
But
might start
didn't-
thinning out.
You can
But
see
didn't
these
Michael-
younger actors. Sorry, Pete, go on.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
These younger actors that have done the opposite. Like I'm thinking of who's the kid who played? He's not a kid, he's a man now. He played Harry Potter. What do they call him?
Oh, Daniel Radcliffe.
Daniel Radcliffe and Kristen Stewart, who was in Twilight. They made these movies that made loads of money when they were younger, and then they've spent the rest of their careers doing these like small, interesting things that they
That they
just
wanna
want to
do.
do.
Yeah.
because they've
Right.
already
Freedom
made the
now.
money. Yeah,
Like the Weird Al Yankovic story, which
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
be the movie of the season.
yeah.
Or I didn't see the movie, but Swiss Army
Swiss
Man,
Army
wherever,
Man.
where
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
basically a corpse to the
Yeah.
whole movie.
But
Yeah,
So
they've both
he's
done
like-
that.
He's like, I can pick and choose what I want. And like Elijah Wood does, he's a producer now, right? For Spectrovision or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just good.
there was a Native American / environmental film with Jeremy Renner and the woman who played the Scarlet Witch.
Yes.
Wind,
Wind River, I think. Wind River.
Wind River.
Yeah.
That's a
But
really good
it's
flick.
sort of like filmed between Avengers movies. It's like we have a 3-month slot where we're not working. What are we gonna do?
That's a solid
then-
movie. I like that movie.
Yeah, that
And
was what's his name? Taylor Sheridan did that
Yeah.
before the whole Yellowstone and all those
Yeah.
TV shows. And he
Oh,
also
did it?
He also wrote and directed a movie called Hell or High Water with Chris Pine and,
That's a
and
really
Jeff
good movie.
Bridges.
Right.
And they have that same kind of like really solid films because he's gotten these actors who are blockbuster actors between blockbusters, and it's
Right.
like, hey, how would you like to come act for a little while? Not too long, you can go back to being
Yeah.
Captain Kirk or whoever,
That's
but-
another Jeff Bridges flick. And then you got what do you call it? Chris Pine's brother in the movie, Ben Foster.
Yeah.
He was really good playing
Well,
the comic.
But
book.
as Thoreau said, I like a broad margin to my life. So this whole, we're off for 3 months, let's go make a movie. I'm like, I'm off for 3 months. I think I'm gonna do nothing.
Well, so I have this theory that you guys know the television series Death in Paradise. It's a
Haven't
British
watched it.
thing.
Yes. Well, I've never watched it, but I know what it is.
All right. So it's like on its 10th season now, and it's set in like a Caribbean island, and they just bring it over actors from Britain, and they do an episode of basically Murder, She Wrote. My theory is that the only reason this show exists is to give British actors a vacation. in the Caribbean that they can like write off.
Interesting.
Yeah, I see nothing wrong with that. If
I
I
think
were a
that's a
British
great
actor,
idea.
I would try to get myself like in multiple episodes.
Yeah,
Because they're
And-
all in everything anyway, so they may as well get one where it's warm for once.
right. There's only like 12 British actors anyway.
Right,
So
David
Yeah.
Tennant,
Yeah,
you'd be like, come
absolutely.
on, David, come on over here.
How do you
Yeah.
think Keanu got that job? There wasn't enough actors to go around.
So, but if we go back to Harlan Ellison used to like, yeah, I go to LA and I write for Hollywood for like 3-4 months, and then I come back and I can write what I want to write for the rest of the year, and not have to worry about getting paid.
Yep.
That's how it works for me.
Well, I know you want to talk about the Devil's Hour, but do you want to do that next week, Pete?
I got 5 movies.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't do your
Bronzo's
5
gotta get his
movies?
5 movies in.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
You
Wow.
promote me and then you just step all over me.
Yeah. Well, as soon as I promoted you, I forgot your
Yeah,
name.
my wife asked me how much you were getting paid, and I said half as much as I am.
Oh, I told him to match it. Jesus.
I actually did match what I'm paying Pete.
Yeah,
Yeah.
still half of it. All right, so my 5 movies I've got, and there's some crossover with Pete. I've got Alien, The Thing, Halloween, Night of the Living Dead. Actually, it's 6 because it kind of fluctuates. The Haunting, and the best werewolf movie, American Werewolf in London. But I mean,
so nothing after 85 then.
yes, shit, right? No, but that's my go-to list. Like, if you ask me, like, what's your 5
Right.
favorites? It's like the staple, the foundation. But when you movies like The Empty Man or The Endless, I love movies like that
Yeah.
because they're well done. Like, that's what if the choice is like, I don't know how I'm trying to verbalize this, but those movies, they're very engaging for me. I like them. Like The Dark and the Wicked, I really like that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'll pick that over a slasher or whatever. I mean, those, if we go like 10 years from now, maybe it changes because it's got to sit there for an amount of time for me to go, this is my favorite.
Wretched. That's another good one.
I always loved Ravenous.
That was a good.
Oh yeah. He's licking
It-
me.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's black, dark humor.
Yeah,
it's just-
Bridget and her husband and I watched this movie
Ravenous, yeah.
Did
we
you?
were,
6 months
we
ago.
were
and
cracking up the whole
we didn't know it was a comedy when it started. And we're like, what's
Wait.
this? What the hell's going on?
And Guy Pearce asks him, did you eat her too? And he goes, yeah. And it's just like, the first time around, I didn't catch that.
Robert
And I'm like,
Carlyle is a great actor. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like,
He went from this to the full Monty.
We're like, is this supposed to be a comedy? Because it's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Endless. I noticed Paul tweeted their new movie. He saw it.
Yeah.
Something in the Dirt is supposed to be really, really good. I'm gonna watch that.
They're
Is it-
another pair of really great filmmakers. I think I've seen except for the new one. I think I've seen everything, and I haven't seen the episodes of Moon Knight they did, but all their films I've seen, and even the one with Anthony Mackie was a little wobbly maybe,
Yeah,
but
I thought
even
that's pretty
so,
wobbly.
it was still worth watching.
Aaron Moorhead, and I can't remember the other guy's name, but yeah,
Benson.
I think so.
Yeah. Justin Benson or something like that.
Crazy.
That's it. But that's like a good example, like Carpenter. When I hear they're doing a movie, I get super excited for it.
Yeah,
Like, when is the new one? Is it out or is it coming out?
It's out.
it's out. I think.
Something in the
Check it
Dirt.
out.
Is it VOD?
Yeah, you can rent
Ooh.
it on Amazon. It's also let's see here. Well, your regular rental places, Vudu, all that. But I think most people go to Amazon. Looks like it's $6.99. Yeah, $6.99 to rent. It's fairly new out. That's not bad for a new movie.
Yeah, no,
No,
it's pretty much brand new. I think.
Well,
But
there's 2 things there. What you said about the directors, so most of what they've done we've loved, so we know we're going to watch this one and it'll probably be good. And then I mean, I trust Paul's opinion. He's a fellow Lake Mungo nut, so this is probably good too, if you liked it. So yeah, I'll bet it's worth a watch.
There's we talked offline earlier about my enjoyment of bad movies. And one of the reasons I like watching bad films is because every once in a while you'll find a gem.
I'll bet you there's a gem in that list that DeBronzo sent you.
Well, I as a rule, if I turn on a film and as a rule, if the words uncorked come up, I turn it off. Because it's just, they're awful films. But one night I left this one, I think it's called Monstrous.
Yeah.
And it's about this woman who goes home with this guy and he's a serial killer. And
it's another woman.
it's another woman. You're right. Right. And she's a serial killer and she's got somebody in the basement.
Has it been 5 years?
Yeah.
Oh.
But that's not all that's in that movie.
Right. That's, and then when they try to escape, things get really fucked up.
Yeah. It's like, there's parts of
it all
there's
fell
actually
apart.
legitimately parts of that movie. It was like, when I saw that, I'm like, that's a really good twist. It's just the rest of the movie, the acting, the whole thing. It's just like, it's not a great production, but it's got great ideas in it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can't say that for the rest of them.
Right. When people make fun of me because I like Alligator Man.
That's not why people make fun of you.
Yes, they do. But Alligator Man is like, it has all the layers of a great Lovecraftian horror film. I mean, it starts out with this woman who has amnesia. And then like they regress her and it's like, oh yes, remember. It's like, oh yeah, my husband was actually an alligator turned into a human being.
It
It
happens.
happens all the time.
Yeah. It
But
could happen.
but then at the end, they're like, well, should we like let her keep her memories? And they're like, no, there were some things man should not know. So,
Every time I see a wallet or boots, I just break down and I don't know why.
That's why you're a regular now, Mike.
yeah.
Gotta earn a paycheck, damn it.
You earned it today.
You did.
All $0 of it.
But like I can remember when like everyone was into J and K horror, Japanese and Korean, and like
Yeah.
everybody's raving about The Ring or the Grudge and Host. And I'm like, have you seen Shudder? Because Shudder, the original Asian version is just magnificent. Not the
That might-
remake.
That
Not
might
the
be on-
channel. TT, not DD.
Yeah.
One of them is on HBO Max. I don't know if it's the original or the remake.
It's the remake.
Oh, all right. Then I skip that one.
Yeah.
Well, Emma, thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to see you again. John, good to see you, buddy.
Who, me? What?
Yeah, you got the email from Ramsey and I about next Saturday.
Where he was like, if you come near me, I will
That's
cast a
the-
spell on you. Yeah.
that's the one. But
Okay,
I've got an in with his wife. She's going to get us that interview. So no.
You know, twice in my
No,
life,
I
I've taken-
rescheduled. It's a deep background Patreon podcast, and I rescheduled because John really wanted to be there. And despite
Which I
what you may
appreciate.
think,
Crazy. Hello.
despite what you may think, I really like John Langan. So anyway, yes, we're gonna interview him next Saturday morning our time, and I'll have it up on the Patreon later that day.
Going after the cord.
Next Saturday. So anyway, good to see you. Good to see all of you guys.
Hey,
And we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.